Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a Tactics Talk map room. We have Airfield for the second one, moving alphabetically down the line. This map is an interesting map overall. As I was looking at it and deciding how I wanted to go about this, I realized that it's one of the few maps where the middle of the map is actually contested pretty much the whole game. Unlike some of the corridor maps or the ones that force you to the edges with a big dead zone in the middle, you can find most of the play going on right here in this area on the map. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at the deployment routes from both sides, typical class positions. I'll talk about where you can get some early shots. We'll go over the general meta and then the critical terrain. I'll point out some of the high risk, high reward class best spots, some of the non-standard win options after we discuss the meta. We'll go over a little bit about the battle flow overall on this map, some crossfire flex opportunities you might want to look out for, and then late game considerations talking about winning or losing and what you can do in those situations. So let's go ahead and we'll move on to deployment routes first. We will start from the west side. Everybody spawns back in this area back here. Deployment routes are pretty standard. TDs and campers are going to head back here and set up in this sniper spot. Artillery in general will head back here and set up in this spot in the corner, although the whole back area back here is useful for artillery. For the tanks moving forward, you'll have some come across here, potentially up this ramp to this spot here, which is a sniper spot, or continuing around and heading on up here. There's two places, there's actually three, but two main places to go. We'll talk about early shots and what you want to be careful for here, but in general, it's posting up here, it's coming up to the top here, or splitting off to go down here to the north side of this. There is also, for fast scout tanks, a route coming off here going through this V and then heading up to either this rock or potentially up to this rock. Also, there's some trees and bushes and whatnot right there that you can use as a scout. We'll talk about high risk, high reward and getting up into the north a little while later. There is an option to come through here a little bit closer to the enemy, looking to get a few more spots and then diving into one of those two spots there. Don't really recommend it. Easy to get spotted by somebody coming up this way and shooting you in the side, or potentially fast TDs who get back into this area. Routes down into the south, you can push straight through the village and then dive down, and there's many places you can go from here. You can head off to the right, you can get up to this part of the ramp right here. You can head this way and kind of crawl around to the middle, or you can peel off and head south to post up here, or head up and post up right here as far as peeking over. So as you can see, deployment routes on this map are everywhere. There are also TD positions to come on up this ramp onto this spot to overwatch the middle of the map as well. In addition, some people will come through here to get to all these spots down in the south and potentially post up in areas about here, but that's not really a great spot. As a general rule, I do not recommend this spot right here. For anybody, it's not a great spot early on. We'll talk about that later. There are some options to post up in the town right here. Again, I don't really recommend these spots. There are some bushes in this particular area right here, but you're really counting on the enemy pushing up and over the middle to get any shots. And if you get spotted here by their guys pushing up and over, then their sniper hill over here will have shots on you. So not a really good spot, but you can go there, and there are some buildings and rocks and things you can hide behind right there. Let's talk about the deployment routes from the west side. The west side spawn is very much a mirror image. You'll see that you spawn back here, and you can go down to the south. If you want to go down that little area right there, and you can post up down here. You can come up this ramp on two sides and look to peek over, or you can cross over this way and come up in the middle right there to look over. There are TD positions back here that you can post up on, or even pushing up to here, but you're really relying on fire in the very far south for those positions. Arty will tend to head back to here in the K-line. I'll talk about why this area and down here in the southeast is the best place for Arty in just a moment. Other TDs can come up here and jump up onto this big sniper post here. That is an advantage for the west spawn. There is no really corresponding sniper post on the east spawn. This one is supposed to be sort of that kind of place, but it's not nearly as good as this one, especially if the East team tries to push around the corner right there. The other places you'll find them go is come all the way through here, and we're going to try to come up to the sniper spot here, post up right here, or post up down in the south. And you can see that's a mirror image of the east side as well. Fast scout tanks will want to squeeze through there and head to potentially here, to here, or up to that rock right there, and getting progressively more dangerous as you get in there and hard to use, although getting slightly closer to the enemy as well. There are TD positions here and these positions here as well. The sniper spot for the east side back here is a better further back sniper spot than this area here, but again, this is the better corresponding closer sniper position for the west over the east side, just based on the number of places you have to shoot from there. You can also come through the town, post up in these areas here behind these rocks, or simply push straight through on your way to this area here, or peeling off down to these other positions down the south. So depending on where you spawn, right or left over here, there's lots of different routes to get into these early positions, but those are the general deployment routes that people will take. I do not recommend this, just like I don't from the east side. That is more a late game position and doesn't have a lot of usefulness early game right there. Neither does posting up like in this position here do much for you early game, although they can be late game fallback positions. Also, some people come around and kind of post up on this corner or peek around from here. Really all you're relying on there is being able to come around and get shots on very aggressive east guys pushing around this rock, or maybe some shots way back here if these guys get lit, and that's just not very likely. Let's talk about typical class positions within that deployment. When we get to early shots, we'll talk a little bit about deployment issues with some of these positions, but in general, for your heavy tanks, you're going to want to post your heavy tanks here, heavy tanks here. Potentially, you can take heavy tanks down here, and even to the middle. Some of that will depend on your position in the 357 or just overall tier-wise. I.e., if you have a all tier 10 game and you got a bunch of heavies, then really all these positions are in play. But if you're the top tier heavy of a 357, you probably want to be right about here with your heavy tank. Taking a look at mediums that are fast enough can get up to the sniper spot. Obviously, all along here, mediums are good for spotting back, countering their guys coming up and over, maybe seeing back if there's very stupid people hanging out in the buildings back here. In addition, mediums and lights, and I'll get to lights in a minute, there's a bush right here where you can see into sometimes the guys, there's bushes along there, see guys on their sniper spot. So it's a counter to their sniper spot. You do have to be careful though, because you have to get kind of high up here and you may get spotted. I'll talk about that when we start talking about early shots. So those are your general medium positions. I don't really recommend mediums go much any other place. Light tanks can get up on the sniper spot. They can also obviously help along here on the top getting lights. Light tanks can also jump into some of these areas here, and they're looking to light up anyone trying to come around the back, and to keep an eye on their tanks that are mirroring you up on this side. That is important because when we get to artillery, I'll talk about that in just a second, and on crossfire capabilities. For your TDs can get up here on the sniper spot. They can hang out back here. Don't really recommend it. They can also be here or potentially in these areas here to get shots down there. TDs are difficult. They also see a lot of them up here. I'm going to put 2 icons there because they just really love to stack into that spot. If it's a turreted TD, fight it as if it is a medium or heavy. That's my recommendation. If it's a casemate, then you can take the further back TD positions as shown right there. For the artillery, I've mentioned it several times. Here or here, I actually like this spot better. Why? Because you can shoot from here to there, and that's where their heavies will stack up. Well, again, we'll get into that in just a little bit. SPGs can also head back up here. Not as recommended because this shot from down in the southeast onto this heavy brawling area is much better. But if you want to be unusual or maybe worried about counter battery or something, that's a more unusual spot. Sometimes they'll hang out back here. I don't really recommend that because you don't have as good as shots, and late game you can get lit really easily when they come up from the south or coming around the corner right there. Let's talk about now the west side. it's a mirror image, right? You've got heavies here, you're going to have heavy here. You can potentially put your heavies along here or down on the south. That's not as recommended, but the same discussion of tiering and whatnot goes on right there. For your mediums, same thing. Mediums can get up onto the sniper spot. They can work the middle. They can aid down here as well, just to take a look. It is very difficult to push south. We'll get into that when we talk about the meta. So all of these positions, I don't recommend as much as coming up here, although mediums up on the top can definitely have a good day, depending on how you fight, and I'll stick another one right there as well. For your lights, coming up here, looking to get in the sniper spot, lighting up guys who are hanging out back here who don't have good camo or not actually in bushes or things like that. And of course, skimming the top and trying to do counters on the lights over there as well. And then you've got light positions, and that one can be contested right there, up there in the north. Doing the same thing that the red ones are trying to do, spot the guys hanging out on the heavy brawling area, see anybody who may be moving around back here. If you're lucky, maybe even catch somebody who's slow crossing here and gets a little too close trying to get up into the sniper spot, and potentially lighting up guys back here for Artie who are sitting on the west side's TD spot right there. So those are all good light positions. Taking a look at TDs, you'll find a bunch of TDs right there. There are some positions in here, like I talked about, not as good. You're really relying on these guys being a little too over aggressive and coming over the top. There are TD positions back here for shots, just like there are on the east spawn for shots on guys who are pushing in here hard as well. That's pretty much your TD spots. There is a possibility of TD spots in these areas in general. There are some bushes there. Things like E25s or fast TDs can get into those T67s, things like that, and work those areas, especially if, in this case, the east team starts to coming around the north side of this rock right here. You can often have shots in there, and depending on how stealthy you are, you might not even be seen. Artillery, same thing. This is the best spot. Why? Because the shots can be put down here into the heavy brawling area. You'll find Artie up here at times, and you can put them back here, but I don't recommend that for the same reason I don't recommend on the east spawn. Guys coming up or through the town or busting through here are going to spot you really easily. At least you have a little bit of ability to defend yourself. In the south, on both of these, you do have to watch. If you lose the south and they're pushing up these ramps right here, you got to get out of there faster. You're probably going to die in place. So those are the general typical class positions. Let's move on to early shots. For early shots, there are a lot of opportunities on this map, depending on how you deploy, how fast you are, and what the enemy team is doing. That goes without saying. That's pretty much every game there is, but this map in particular is quite interesting in regards to that. So starting over here on the east, where can I get some early shots? One of the biggest ones is as you're coming up this ramp, turning your turret this way and look for their guys going up this ramp and shooting them in the side. That is one opportunity if you're fast enough. The other opportunity is to come up here, set up. If you're very fast, come up here, set up, and then get your front pointing around the corner there and watching them come up that ramp and hitting them there as well. Realize that if they have fast tanks, they're going to be doing the exact same thing, maybe coming up here and looking to shoot you in the side. So there's usually a shot traded or two right here. You have to look at how fast your tank is, look at the tier position that it's in, and make that decision. But I usually try to push up here with any kind of medium or light early on. Which now brings us to early shots when you get up to these positions, getting into these little sniper spots, peeking out from these bushes, and you'll catch guys along here coming up too high from both sides, as well as looking back to here from the east spawn and looking back to here from the west spawn and getting shots into both these areas. So those are opportunities for early shots. If anyone is dumb enough to come up through the middle, then both these sniper spots will have shots, especially from the west spawn getting into this spot right here. You're going to see guys who are slow to come through the town and are trying to head this way, and you can often get shots on their side, or potentially same thing here, seeing guys headed this way out in the open and have shots onto them. So that is very useful. Very much less so from the west spawn can you do, or the east spawn, sorry, can you do that, because you just simply can't see their guys deploying. So that big open field right there, it's a bit of an imbalance on this map, and you don't have the same opportunity getting up onto the sniper spot from the west side, which is unfortunate. I'll clear out some of this stuff out. Those are the early spots and possibilities there. If you are a slow heavy, I said we talk about it a little bit, and you're coming up here, you have to be very careful as you're coming up these ramps, because if you're not paying attention, there can be people posted up here and here taking shots on you as you come up. Or even if it's a fast enough enemy heavy, he's already here, and as you're coming up and over, he has a shot on you, especially if you try to get up on the top hill. If you feel like you're late and there's already guys posted up here, what you need to do as you're getting into that position is hug this rock, get up in here, and then come around this way if you want to fight it. But if you cut it off there, you can expect to be shot at or artied potentially, depending on how fast the arty reloads. Other early shot opportunities, as you're driving through this area right here, especially from the west, you might get shots on scouts trying to get into these positions. So look for those snapshots right there. Look for any scouts who come through this area doing the YOLO blitz, trying to light up whatever's coming in both directions. You may have shots from either side. It is harder to get a shot at a scout moving into this position than it is from the west position, because you've got these rocks in the way right here. There's no big open funnel right there to take shots equivalent from the west side. So you're going to have trouble doing that on the west side right there. So those are early shots. Other early shots are going to be from anyone camping in the back area back here, on anyone who's silly enough to get up onto the hill. I'm going to talk about some positions here in just a minute. Other early shots are people who just come YOLOing around this corner from either direction. That is not as usual. You won't see that too much. But if you're fast enough and get down here and post up here or here, and you're ready and you see the guy come around the corner first, you might get a shot and be able to back out. So early shots available from there. I said we talk about the bushes, so let's go ahead and do that right now. In the middle right here, there's a bush here, and there's a bush here. And from this side and this side, if you can get into those bushes, you'll have opportunities to take shots into here, and from here you actually have opportunities to take shots into the sniper position. From here it's not as easy to get a shot into their sniper position, but it can be possible. Realize though, as you get into those two bushes, you are getting pretty high on this hill, and you may take fire from these guys or artillery, especially if you are counter scouted by their guy on the other side. So just be careful. Don't go just driving up in there. Kind of take a look, peek, and then get in there as soon as possible, and you might be able to get some free shots on guys here. And from this side, you can actually get some shots into their heavies hanging out on this back side. It's a bit tricky to use, and watch out for artillery plus counter scouting, like I said, or counter spotting. But those are all possibilities of early shots. One last early shot opportunity for a TD are from this position and this position, as guys come up this hill or come up this hill. So a shot from here into his side or a shot from here into their side is a possibility if your TD's fast enough to get up onto those spots, get set up, and maybe they got a slower, medium, or heavy who actually tries to go up there. You can really ruin his day. And if one of you can track him, especially if you've got some guys hanging out here doing some shots on him, you can obliterate tanks before they can even get up there. If you intend to get up to those sniper spots, be very careful, because if you're seeing fast TDs, even a Scorpion G can get up here and hit someone on the side before a heavy can get all the way up and around that corner, so be very careful there. Any silly early pokes, the same thing. If I have a heavy and I do an early poke here, or I do an early poke here, I can expect to take fire from these TD spots, and that can ruin your day early on, so be very careful about those. All right, let's talk about the general meta. The general meta on this map is you win this area and basically you win the game. Sometimes this spot down here can be decisive if it's won early and there's a push, but pushes from this way into the west spawn and pushes from this way into the east spawn are very difficult. Why? Because this area and this area can obliterate it, plus there's usually going to be some TDs and stuff back here that are going to fall on you, and you're down in this pit with this water that's hard to maneuver in, and then you've got artillery dropping on you as well. So even an early win down here is not really a great idea. I see this all the time. You get a big push down here, they push in, and then they get trapped behind these rocks, and these guys over here get trapped behind these rocks and stuff, and they're just stuck down there. There's nothing that they can do. So that is a good push to do late in game, but it is not a good early push area. Unlike this, if you can win this area early, then it's easy to move around on the map for the rest of the map. It's easy to get back over this side. It's easy to come up onto these two sniper positions and shoot down into guys hanging out in the middle. So really winning this is the most important meta position. But this can be quite a slog, especially if you're talking about artillery. Say there's 3 artillery on a side and they're just dropping in on the heavy spots. It's hard to come around the corner. Why? Because those aforementioned TD spots, if I'm coming around either way, I'm taking fire from those spots onto me, as well as the artillery. And then the enemy, if you do start pushing in, will typically fall back to these kinds of positions right here, being supported by fire from their TDs. So even if you win the middle bit, it's hard to push down onto them because they've fallen back and gone hold down. So it's very difficult right there. Also watch out for trying to get tempted into pushing around this way. The nice thing is if you push around this way and you've got them held here, then you can get shots up into their sniper spot, into the side of their heavies that they're hanging out here. Same thing from this way if you come around and take that area. But remember, both those moves are then swept by fire from TDs coming in from this direction and this direction. So you've got to kind of count noses and see what's going on and whether you can do that without being shredded from the side. So in general, like I said, this is the most important terrain right here. It needs to be won. This does need to be watched, but it is more of a secondary position right there. And the rest of everything is just support fire positions right here. You're not going to push in the north, and you're going to have a very difficult time pushing in the south. It can work, and it's never going to work in the north. Just don't do it. But in the south, it can be very difficult, as I discussed. So let's talk about some high-risk, high-reward spots and things you can do there. I covered some of the high-risk, high-reward spots already as we discussed, but let's just go back over some of them. The bushes right here, potentially, and the bush right here. Both of these sniper spots right here, more medium risk, high reward, because you can pull back behind these rocks and avoid getting artied. Artie can hit you from here and here on those sniper spots if you pull out too much, as can the TDs back in these areas shoot at you if you're not careful. But you do have some protection to pull back behind the rock, so more of a medium risk, high reward. These can be very lucrative here, but you do have to be careful about being counter scouted and counter spotted. The only other one is this general area here, and maybe this and this area for TDs. Getting there can be tricky, but if you get there unspotted and you're very stealthy like an E25 or T67 or something, you can really have a heyday shooting guys who are trying to fight down here. But that's pretty much it. I'll add the middle as sort of a high risk, high reward spot as far as topping over and maybe getting shots towards either way or countering the other guys topping up there. If you're talking about a tank with a really good turret and hold down capability, gun depression as well, then those spots can be very lucrative as more of a medium risk, high reward kind of spot right there. But again, artillery can punish you because you're really out in the open, and your only option is to fall back off the back edge of this and make the downslope a little bit more difficult shot from the artillery as you're, that's not a way to get off, as you're trying to back off right there. And those are the high risk, high reward spots. As far as the non-standard win conditions or options, I talked about this being the critical terrain, and really the only big non-standard one is a south push here, or from the other side pushing up in here and wiping out this one fast enough that you can actually get up behind them and come around behind the entire crew. Just realize that that's very difficult to do if they have any kind of numbers and these positions are occupied. So YOLO rush in the south, probably not going to work. It's really the only non-standard win option that you have on this game. Otherwise, it's going to be a slog here in the critical terrain like I talked about. Battle flow on this map is quite interesting, and it's one of the more open maps. I discussed at the very beginning that all the fighting happens in the middle, and that's actually pretty cool. So the typical battle flow is there's a fight going on here and there's a skirmish going on down here. When this fight is won, whichever side wins it is then going to fold in on the southern spot and potentially go clean up this spot and this spot depending on how well they won and where the threat really is. If there's still a fight in the south and the mediums and whatnot are skirmishing, and say you're on the west side and you've won, you can expect the west side guys to come on this spot and start shooting you in the side down here and helping kill you off, potentially coming off and down into the middle and getting in behind you if you're fighting. The same thing applies on the other side. If the west side wins, they're going to come up on this spot or potentially filter through down through the middle, and now they're going to have shots on you hanging out on the back edge. If you're spawned in the west, you still haven't won down here in the south, and you're going to get folded in on. The other thing that you've got to do battle flow wise once you win this critical terrain in the middle here is when you start to push out, you've got to be cognizant as you're trying to take these positions. Let's say you're on the west side and you're headed east, that there's still TDs here, there's still TDs here, and you may have guys falling back to these corners here. So as you're pushing across this big open area here, it can be difficult as you're taking fire. One way to do it is to post up here, which will protect you from them, but won't protect you from them down here. So you do have to be careful, cognizant of what's left in the game before you go pushing through this very wide open area. It is not quite as difficult actually from the other side. Although if you're on the west side and you win the middle and you're pushing towards the, I'm sorry, if you're on the east side and you win the middle and you're pushing towards the west, it can be a bit difficult because this is a better sniper spot. However, you've got more cover. This big rock right here allows you to kind of hide down behind it as you're pushing in. You do have to be careful, though, about people who have fallen back to this position, at which point you've got that big open spot. But you have a better opportunity to sort of filter in towards this way, or maybe come around here and get close enough to spot the guy on the rocks right here. And if you know the north's clear, you can actually flow around this way and come up on the north side of the two hangars and come up about behind these guys, spot them, and start to get shots. The same thing applies as I talked about already as far as folding down into the south if you need to clear out the south right there. But be careful on both sides about pushing through the big open area when there's still a lot of TDs left. Yes, you've won the top and that's the flow, but if you're pushing into this open area, be careful about the TDs hanging out in all the various TD spots right there. Same thing applies if you've won the south. Let's say you win the critical and you win the south. Same thing applies as you're moving either towards the east or towards the west, depending on which side you started on. You've still got to deal with all the TDs that are going to be hanging out in these spots, so be careful of that as far as battle flow goes. Let's talk about the crossfire opportunities. Tons of crossfire opportunities. I've covered most of them. We'll just go over them one more time. These sniper spots are big ones. They're going to give you all kinds of crossfire opportunities down into the south. And even if you get guys filtering through the north, you may have shots on them as well, crossfire-wise. The TD spots here and here offer an opportunity to fire this way in case you're getting pushed on your cap, and to fire this way in case they're coming up in the north, and obviously to fire down here or into this area right here if you're getting pushed in the middle. So lots of crossfire. This one is not as useful, but it can work. It's got a little bit of better time taking shots onto the lights that are hanging out up here, and you will have shots on guys who are pushing in if they win the middle and trying to push into there. But it's fairly untenable, and you're going to get backed off there pretty quick. If you take a close-in shot, you're going to get spotted. Next thing you know, you're either going to get shredded or you'll be backing off that hill pretty quickly. There's just not a lot of cover. This one is a little bit better for that, especially this big rock. I can sneak around the other side of that and hang out. Crossfire opportunities from the middle are all over the place. So you've got this bush and this bush like I talked about. I can get into here. I can get into here. Both of these can shoot into this middle spot if you get guys moving back and forth right here in the heavy brawl area. Lots of crossfire opportunities. Down in the south, not much on the south piece, but all along that ridge you get shots all over the place. I can shoot into there from this middle here. I can actually shoot across here. If I'm coming up this way, I can shoot across into here. Let me clear this out because there's a lot of lines going on right now. In addition to that, these two spots are very useful for shooting across into this area. There's a little amphitheater here which blocks a lot of it, but if they're not being careful and moving around along the top, both these sides have shots down into the top part of this hill right here if you're looking for them. And early on, when there's lots of guys popping up and back on both sides, you can get some pretty good opportunities there. Again, the amphitheater blocks a lot of that, but if they're not being careful, they can stick out a piece of their tank and you can get shots on there. There are some crossfire opportunities from here, but again, that's late game stuff, and you're probably not being very useful to the team. And of course, the scout positions here provide all kinds of shot opportunities, provided you can stay alive in those spots. This is one of the more changed parts of this map. Seems like they change this every 6 months to a year. There's been various stages where it was overpowered from one side or the other, get invisit TDs or scouts sitting in or just shredding people here in the middle because they can't be spotted. There's still a little bit of that left, but there's quite a few less trees now. It's a little bit easier to deal with these guys, and they can get the snot splashed out of them by artillery because the rocks just aren't big enough. Eventually, you're going to peel them out of there if you give any kind of concerted effort to do it. But you may have to do that crossfire-wise to get rid of him. Otherwise, you can't push around the north side of these rocks here without getting shredded by the little lights. All right, let's talk about late game considerations. I've covered a good portion of it. Let's say you're winning. Winning's pretty easy. So I've won the middle. I either come and clean up the south, or if I've won the south also, now I'm pushing into the back, and from the south I'm pushing up the ramp. And I need to look for TDs here. I need to look for TDs here. I need to make sure there's nobody that's fallen back into the city. And I need to look for TDs here. This is where my artillery will be killed. Same thing up here. My artillery should be there. So those are all those considerations you want to do. I would probably not push up through the middle right here unless we are winning by a lot. As in, I know where all their guns are and nobody's around. But if I'm missing some TDs or other tanks, and there's still a considerable number of them, even if I've won, say there's 5, 6, and you've only got a couple spotted, I'd be very leery of pushing through this middle bowl right here because they'll start pounding the snot out of you. Good news is, more than likely, if they start doing that, they're going to take a lot of fire and disappear pretty quickly right there, but I'd be careful about pushing through there. Those are late game considerations going the one way. Let's go the other way. Same thing really applies in the middle, coming from the east win. Once I win this, I push down and win the south. Once I win the south right here, I can come up these ramps, or I can push through the middle. Same considerations. I'd be careful about hanging out in the middle right there. I can use this. I didn't talk about it on the other side, but I can use this, the other guy's sniper spot, to get shots out this way, or to get shots out this way from there as well. Be careful about both ways coming across this into, as I've discussed, TD positions. But I can filter up to the north to light these guys up here, or I can E&E my way through here. Might be able to light them there, and eventually push up into here and kill whatever might be camping. Same thing here. As you come around this corner, if there's any artillery left, you can expect them to be sitting here and blap you in the face. But as long as you know that and are ready for it, and hopefully you got enough hit points, you do have to be careful about this fallback position coming towards the west. They will kind of hang out in there, in amongst the buildings, or in amongst these rocks, or on this corner here is one example. As you're coming up and around here, taking a shot, and then they pull back. So watch out for that. Same thing applies down here. You may get them hanging out on this one. This one's a little bit more dangerous. It's good for stopping you from coming this direction. Not as good for stopping you coming to this direction. As you can see, that's just out in the open, and the other team can use that rock and pound the guy hanging out right there trying to hide. But those are the late game considerations. The last thing late game wise you have to watch out for, you get down to low hit points. I think I drew like a bug there or something. You get down to low hit points and there's artillery left. Pushing up into the city can be problematic. There's lots of buildings, lots of places for people to hide. You can get spotted pretty easily, and then you got artillery dropping on you right there. So rather than push into a town that's defended by a couple guys hanging out, I would actually come around the edges of this, and I'll do this from both sides. Try to get rid of the artillery in these spots before you then start messing around with the guys in the city. And if you can get somebody back here ready to pop up over and take those long range shots on them, that's even better. But I certainly would not try to push into the city from all these directions like this. And the same thing, and I won't drop, but the same thing happens in the west. Before I knew I had all the artillery gotten rid of, especially if I'm low hit points, and I'm afraid I might get killed off and then lose the game from there. All right, that is it. That is the long and short of Airfield map room. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Good luck on your next Airfield map, and let me know how it went. We'll see you.